Welcome to this podcast is making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is episode 151. Today's guest is an actor of stage and screen. You know him from Dexter, Once Upon a Time, Stargate SG-1, The Mask of Zorro, and The Legend of Zorro. And of course, he played Sal Bass in two Seinfeld episodes, The Implant and The Pilot. Please welcome Tony Amendola. Tony, thanks for joining.
Sure, my pleasure. Yeah.
New Haven Zone, Tony Amendola.
That's right.
Thanks for joining
Arguably
us.
the best pizza in America, arguably.
Yeah, I do want to get to that. I had Frank Pepe's over the summer, but so take us back. It's been 30 years, Tony. The Implant, one of the best, Seinfeld episodes of all time, written by Peter Melman. But tell us a little bit about how the role came about. Obviously, you were well into your career at that point already, but 1993. What happened? Your agent gives you a call, and
it's funny. Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was thinking the same thing. It was 30 years ago, right? Literally, right about now. I knew it because my wife was in the hospital at the time for a procedure. Luckily, nothing serious or anything. But I'd go from the set to Cedars and, spend time with my wife. And so I remember it was 30 years ago, January in 1993. But I'm going to correct you in the sense that I was well into my career, but not into my television and film career. Because I worked for 15 years in the theater, thereabouts, before I was heavily here. And if anything, 93, which is the year I did Seinfeld, that's when things broke for me. In 93, I did... there was the Cisco Kid. It was a TNT movie with Jimmy Smits and Cheech Marin. That was my first, run of the film type job. And I had done obviously some other episodics and stuff. And I was so happy to do Seinfeld because it was one of the few shows that made me laugh. My wife could always tell when I was watching Seinfeld because I'd be in the study or something and she'd hear me laugh, because it was a, laugh out loud sort of experience. And so I was very pleased. And also because I didn't really get a chance to do that many sitcoms. Since I've done, Titus, I've done Will and Grace, but they're rare for me. They're not common. And to be able to do an iconic show, and I know this is what you're focused on, but I can honestly say it truly is, an iconic show. And so it was a pleasure to do it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to watch it. And as Chris mentioned, so it was one of your first shows, it sounds like. So what happens during the audition? Are you coming in and reading for Larry and Peter Melman? What did they tell you about the part? I mean, as far as, are you Rushdie? Are you supposed to be Rushdie? The accent,
they didn't
the whole
tell
thing.
me anything. The accent was my choice.
Nice.
I did it. I mean, they could have been a, look-alike sort of thing. In some way, I resemble Rushdie. Not really. But, balding and had a goatee or a beard of some kind. And I added the accent and, but they didn't say, I didn't even know, to be honest with you, who Larry David was. It was just another audition for me. But I obviously, after all these years, I know very well. And my first encounter with Larry was you do a rehearsal and you do some run-throughs. And then all of a sudden this guy shows up on set. This guy shows up and he's very, if you're looking for a network suit, this is not him. This is, this is a guy who's got the sneakers and he's got the, the sort of khaki pants and he's sort of long and I kid you not, he had a yo-yo. And he was playing, with a yo-yo, watching the run through. And now, you're sensitive as an actor. This is an important guy because he's doing that and everyone's paying attention to him. Not like in the, what are you doing? It's like, what do you want? Is there anything we can do? Because he comes in and gives notes. Peter, I had a little bit more contact with. During the film, he was very nice and, very sort of assuring. It's the right direction, and all those things. And I had a funny story with Michael. I'll never forget this. Again, Julia was terrific. She was warm and she was like the welcome wagon. I mean, just with her smile, she was like, "Oh, I'm happy you're here," and everything. She doesn't know me from Adam, but right. But Michael, sort of grabs me, says, "Hey, can we run those lines? The lines from the sauna." I said, "Sure. I'd love to." So we're running lines on a set. We said, "Yeah, come sit here," right? And we're sitting, and he's eating an orange. Doing a couple of oranges, actually. And he's peeling, and we're talking and working, and he's peeling the oranges. Anyway, make a long story short, we do this for about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and he just gets up and runs away. And all the orange peels are all over everything. and just at that time, you couldn't have had more perfect comic timing. The first AD comes around the bend, and he sees me sitting on a couch of a set with all, just having made a mess. And all I could do was like point. It was him, and he was like, "Oh, please don't tell me." But
wow,
that's funny. That's
we hear a lot of. Yeah, go ahead.
We heard that on a recent episode.
Really,
he did the same thing. He took napkins away, and the guest star thought that he was going to get blamed.
It's my Michael Richards story, and basically, we had to shoot that scene over 2 days because it started raining halfway through the shoot on the first day. And I don't remember if this happened on first or second day of the shoot for the Joe Allen's champagne coulis scene, but I'm sitting there at the table, right, in wardrobe, camera ready. They're setting up cameras. They're getting these big silk panels in the air to keep, the light from glaring on us. And Jerry's not there yet. He's, wherever he is. And Michael comes over and introduces himself. And I'm like, "Hi, nice to meet you." Yeah. That's fun. And then he looks down at the napkins that the art direction or props department had put down on the tablecloth. He went, "Are these the napkins?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." He goes, "Oh, same color as my shirt." No. And he grabs like 4 setups off of the table and sticks them in his pocket and walks away. And I'm like, okay. First I'm thinking like, why does it matching your shirt have anything to do with anything?
Right.
Maybe he's got a little synesthesia and that makes a sound in his, I don't know. But anyway, then the art director or set dresser comes up and goes, "Weren't there napkins here?" And I went, "Yes, there were." And he goes, "What happened?" And I thought, am I being punked? Are they messing with me? I still don't know. And I went, Mr. Richards took them away. And I feel like I'm tattling, like I'm snitching. Right. And he goes, "Why?" And I went, they apparently match his shirt. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm either going to get fired or, this is a big joke they're playing on me or something like that. So the art director comes back, and I don't remember because I'm a little colorblind if we got the same color napkins or he acquiesced to Michael Richards' request or whatever. But it was just the weirdest thing. You're a guest star, you're a little excited, maybe a little nervous and stuff like that. And then the star comes, does something to you, does something in your area. And, the crew who have a hard-ass job, and when they tick something off the box, they're done. They're moving on. And they're coming up almost looking at me like, what did you do? Why didn't you stop him? I felt like it was going to be the next thing they said.
From Michael Richards.
It's almost like he's doing some like practical joke or something, maybe. I don't know. It's hilarious.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just... just that, he's in his creative space and... But it was really, again, iconic. And I've been fortunate enough. I did the first job I ever did, if you really want to know, was in L.A. I did a little bit up in San Francisco, was L.A. Law. That was my first job. Now that's...
Corbin Bernsen, yeah?
Yeah, Corbin Bernsen. That was a water cooler television at the time, which we don't have anymore. Seinfeld, obviously, was water cooler television. Everyone would talk about it the next day at work or around. "Hey, did you see, that doesn't exist anymore." The West Wing is another one, I'd say, so, but Seinfeld was special, so special that when I did the second episode, I was doing a play up in San Francisco. And it was like, oh, do I really want to fly down and all this hassle and everything? I thought, no, I will fly down. So.
Yeah. When did you find out about that? So you filmed this in January, aired in the end of February, and then the pilot obviously was the famous finale of season 4. Right. When did you get that call? I know you mentioned you're up in San Francisco.
It must have been, probably March, maybe when I went up, or April. I forget. It was, it's too long. I remember the play I was doing, but it, San Francisco is easy. It's only an hour on a plane, so.
And since we're on that, iconic scene. Obviously, they kind of flash back to a bunch of guest stars from that season, and then there's you with Sidra. I mean,
yes,
yes. I mean,
doesn't get better than that,
Yeah, it doesn't get better than that. What? It seems like when I flash back to the Implant, I feel like you're planting some seeds that foreshadows that, right? When Kramer and Jerry are talking, you and Sid are in the room talking. We never know what you're talking about, but we assume you're making some moves there. What did Larry, what did Melman, what did those guys tell you about if there was any relationship or were you supposed to work on one?
I'm going to tell you something that's very interesting about this job. When people are confident that you're doing a good job, they don't talk to you. And if you're a young actor, you might assume that, oh my God, but I was a little bit older, at the time. So you make a big realization. No, there's a lot to be done. You are on the right track. If you weren't on the right track, they would let you know. So there was no big talk, but I think to my mind, the seeds of that second scene go back to, the name of the first, the Implant. Are they real? Aren't they real? And that somehow that's what was brought back by that line that I say, he's pretty much a pig in that scene.
Novak.
Jim Novak. So, that I didn't really give it much thought. I didn't work with Terry, but I worked on her series, Lois and Clark, a number of years, maybe 4 years later. And stuff. So, and she was delightful. She hadn't burst out yet. The Bond role was in front of her in a lot of episodic. But the thing I remember about Terry at the time is we had some chats that she was into horseback riding. So she would come to the set after having been on a horse for a while, ridden. And she was, it's energizing to be on a horse. I don't know if either of you ride.
No, I actually never have, but it sounds like it is. You mentioned Larry, especially Larry on set, how he was kind of the presence that once he came around, everyone kind of knew, okay, what does he want? Showrunner, right? You didn't have any scenes with Jerry, but curious if you had any interactions with Jerry, either behind the scenes or anything like that, where you got to kind of see him working as well as the star and sort of co-creator.
Oh, you always, yes. Yeah. I mean, with Jerry, it was the sly smile. You're welcome.
Right.
You're welcome here. I'm glad you're here, but let's not talk.
Right. You got things to do.
Let's not actually talk. And it's always interesting to watch how Jerry works, how George works, how Kramer works, how Elaine works. There was a real backies thing that I loved about Elaine is when she'd get excited, she'd push them, get out of here, And we used to do that as kids all the time. I mean, that was my favorite. But and Jason, as a matter of fact, I just saw a play Jason directed in LA and stuff. So I've kept track of all the people, and I cherish the memory. I cherish the invitation, and particularly since it's 2 episodes, and who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew at the time what it would be? I wouldn't be talking to you, right?
I rewatched it again today, and as Chris mentioned at the top, it is one of the best episodes of all time, and really, you're seeing with Michael Richards there in the sauna, right, where he says it's like a sauna in here. It's a classic Kramer line, right? And then he asks you, what do? You give like a close your eyes pause, like. And then you're like, I'm a writer. And that to me is the tell that maybe you are Salman Rushdie, right? It was that choice you made there to kind of pause and be like, oh no, I got to tell this guy what I do. He's catching on. He's asking me questions.
Right.
Kind of thing. Like great, like just nod you do. It's very slight, but I always pick up on it, that kind of pause there.
Well, it's one of the things you want to keep the mystery. The thing you don't want to do is lead others to believe you're either one or the other. You have to leave the possibility for both. And Kramer's reaching. Bass. You see, it's another kind of fish. You see, he's reaching. So it was great. Really was a lot of fun. And also, we're in a sauna, not obviously it wasn't a real sauna. It was smoke, a fog machine or a smoke machine. And, it was an easy change. We're all in towels, so getting out was easy. And I had, I had one other day, at the gym.
Yeah.
As well, where he first spots me. Anyway.
Were you on set for the whole week of taping?
I was on set. The audience? Well, you do a read, right? You do a read, and then you rehearse, and then you do it in front of the audience. Yeah. So I was, but I have to say, in comparison to Hour Long and in comparison to film, half hour is what you want to do. Sitcoms are what you want to do because, you come in for a table read on the first day, a couple of hours. They do a rewrite. They send you home. You feed you. And then the days get progressively longer. As you go along, you start running it. And then, of course, you do it in front of an audience, which is great, frankly, and they also film it.
Right.
They sometimes will tape it during the day. So it depends, but the schedule is, by TV and film standards, is outrageously generous. It's not to say, but then again, is that they put you on in front of the live people.
Yeah,
which,
yeah. And speaking of the live people, now that's why I'm kind of leading the question to this point, is that the real spectacular line that Terry Hatcher gives is Sidra at the end, where she kind of just, and by the way, right, one of the biggest laughs I think the show's history, right? I mean, that must have been kind of cool to watch live. Where I think the story goes too that Larry David kind of added that line at the end, and she delivers it to that huge laugh. So I'm sure that.
And by the way, they are real and magnificent, or what? Or I forget.
Spectacular, yeah.
Spectacular, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And it's the double dip. Don't forget. We can't forget the double. The double dip is. That's the whole thing. There's so many parts to that episode that are wonderful.
This episode is. Talk about just jam packed. And you mentioned it before, the fish. It's not salmon, you idiot. There's just so many. Right. Incredible lines, and obviously you mentioned Terry Hatcher, yourself, Timmy, right?
Yes, Timmy,
Megan Mullally, who I think you probably worked with later. And
I worked with Megan. I actually gave confession to Megan in Will and Grace. Yes, if you can imagine a priest giving confession, it was like, oh my God, get her out of here. I don't have enough. I can't absolve that much. It was fantastic. Yeah. Incredible show. And you mentioned this earlier, your wife always heard you laughing. So you were a big Seinfeld fan before your audition, I gather? Well, yeah, but it wasn't on that long.
Right. This was season 4. Your episode finally was on Thursday night, and it kind of just catapulted.
Right, but by that point, you remember the first year or so, no one knew. It didn't take, at least a year, right? It didn't take off initially.
Yeah,
exactly.
A lot of people credit the contest as kind of putting on the map, which was season 4. So
absolutely. No, I loved it from the get go. I thought, well, this is my kind of sitcom, because they're recognizable. It's not just young, beautiful people, it's all the little dilemmas. It's the silly shirt Jerry has to wear, Kramer, coming up with a cologne that is, and of course George.
And I think the beauty of the show, we mentioned your episode specifically, all those guest stars shine. As we talk about a lot, is how kind of unselfish the main 4 were.
Yes.
Right. When people think of the Implant, they think of Sal Bass. They think of Terry Hatcher. They don't really think of the main 4, and I think that's the beauty of the show. Have you seen that? You've been on a ton of shows, but Have you seen that kind of similarity?
It no, to answer your question, it's not common. It's not like it's expected, but it was real on Seinfeld. I think in part it was because the people were very good. They were very professional. There was a wonderful blend of craziness and warmth and talent, and it was a successful show. So they knew. And I've actually worked with Lee Arenberg and some of the other people in. We did Once Upon a Time together.
Sure, we talked to him as well. Lee.
Yeah,
great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the other amazing thing. God, who is it? I'm trying to think. Frank. No, Fancy. Richard Fancy.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I've worked. Yeah. So I've worked with a bunch of the people over the years.
Do you recall?
And so it's.
So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. No. I'm good.
I was just going to ask, as you're mentioning these people and kind of the alum, if you will, right, the Seinfeld universe as it spreads out. We were just curious. We've talked to many guest stars. Sometimes that the rap party. Did you remember going to the rap party for season 4 or for?
I think I was working.
Okay, yeah,
I was working. I was doing the play,
so play in San Francisco. Yeah,
I couldn't go. Another
what play
one.
Was that? We've mentioned it twice now. We better know what play.
I believe it was The Learned Ladies by Molière, with Gene Stapleton and a wonderful actor named Sidney Walker, who most people don't know, but he was in Prelude to a Kiss. He was, probably 75 and did his first major role in a movie at 75, Sidney Walker. But it was a Molière called The Learned Ladies at ACT in San Francisco.
Very nice.
Wonderful theater, yeah.
So we touched on this on your intro. I would love to hear a little bit about kind of your upbringing from New Haven. We know you're a Southern Connecticut State University guy.
That's right.
Our high school football coach was a Southern Connecticut State grad, played football there. I think he's a little older than you, but rich history there, right? Don Loria, 1970. Tell us a little bit about, how that shaped you and how you kind of just took off and went to LA and kind of, I don't want to say never looked back, but we'd love to hear a little bit about the history.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Dan Loria, because the very first play I was in, I understudied. I had a role, but I understudied Dan Loria because he was a football player. So I saw
him play Lombardi in the city. Yeah.
Yes, I heard he was great. He's a perfect role for him. I know Dan. We've seen each other down here. I sort of fell into college. I was first one to go. I didn't know if I would go. And initially in college, I fell into acting. I never did a thing in high school, nothing. Matter of fact, in high school, I worked full time. I worked in a garage from 4 to 12. Previous to that, as a junior and senior, I played basketball for a long time. I also played high school basketball. And, but it was socially acting. I had a lot of passion and didn't know where to put it. Some people that I grew up with put it in drugs. Some people put it in crime. Some people put it in schooling. I happened to find acting. And the thing that was useful is very close to New Haven, two Pepe's Pizza on Worcester Square are two regional theaters, classic. I mean, the really, really well thought of regional theaters, Long Wharf and Yale Rep. And I could go, for instance, and walk on a Saturday night when I was lost and, an erotic teenager, I could go see Christopher Walken in a play. I could go see John Lithgow in a play, John Cazale in a play. I saw Meryl Streep when she was a student. Sigourney Weaver when she was a student. So all of those were my earliest theatrical experiences. And I was very lucky because that's, I didn't develop bad habits because of, say, high school or other things. And the bar I was trying to attain was a very, very high bar. So that was fortuitous. And I went to graduate school in Pennsylvania. And then, like all good people, I moved to New York, good actors, thinking I'd make my life there. Before doing that, I taught at Southern, where I went to school, and at Temple, where I went to school, to get my nest egg. I taught for 3/4 of a year. So in other words, 1 full semester and a quarter. And I had the opportunity to take that track. And I just said, no, I'm not, I don't want to teach acting because I don't feel it's right. I haven't done it, now. So I said no. And I have gone back and taught, but moved to New York, got hired at Ashland. I don't know if you know Ashland. It's an Oregon Shakespeare Festival. They do the type of theater that you're trained to do as an actor. Classic, at that time, it was all classical work: Shakespeare, Chekhov, Moliere, Miller, Williams. It was all, and they provided the home in rep. So in other words, they did 12 plays a season that rotated. So you played 3 parts, 3 very different parts in different worlds, in different sizes. And I did that for 2 years. And from that, I met a guy who ran a theater in Berkeley, and I went there for 10 years. He offered me a 5-year contract, and I laughed. His name was Michael Liebert, because who offers a young actor a 5-year contract? And he said, no, I'm serious. He says, if we don't like each other, we shake hands and leave. And true his word, I was there 10 years, and I met my wife, and I learned how to be an actor, because I had to play parts I wasn't right for. In LA, you play the parts. In LA, a regular actor will play the parts he's right for, and a star will play the parts he's right for and the parts he's not right for. That's arguably the definition of a star. They just want you in the thing. Right. And at Berkeley, I could play everything from Mo Axelrod, which was right up my alley. But I could also play the gentleman caller in Glass Menagerie. Now, who would cast me as the gentleman caller? You know what I mean? And that scared me. So it was there. And then about toward 1990, thereabouts, I was going back and forth that I thought, I believed all modern actors have to make their peace with media. It's okay, but don't be a theater actor and then say, I think theater, film and television is crap because you haven't tried it. Maybe you were afraid to try it. Go test it. If you feel that way and you only want to do theater, God bless you. It's a wonderful life, but you need, and so I came to LA, and I was lucky I did, because the whole world changed. It used to be when I was there, one theater had 20 actors on seasonal contracts. Another theater had 8 actors seasonally. In other words, from September to May. Summers, I'd do Shakespeare. I'd work 52 weeks out of the year. And all of a sudden, that world changed. That hardly exists. It does, but hardly. And so my timing coming to LA was really fortuitous, and you get excited again, because it's very different. Being truthful, to 1,200 people is very different than a camera right here, So
it sounds like you have a love for all of it, from movies,
I do.
television, obviously theater. I think that's obviously you got your start, and you probably have the most special place. But I think there's a special, and you've done some incredible. Stargate, Dexter. When you're walking down the street these days, what's Tony Amendola most recognized for?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I play pick the show. So when you make the contact, the person smiles, or the person is trying to remember where it's from, because I'm one of those actors who has a face that people think, I know. And so I pick, this is a Stargate fan, or, oh my God, this is a Dexter fan. Probably my favorite story is I was seeing a play, and there was a couple there with a little girl, maybe 9, 10, 11 years old. And she smiled at me and she whispered to her parents. And I had to go away and pick up the tickets and stuff. And this little girl went up to my wife and said, "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Geppetto?" Because once upon a time I played Geppetto. And my wife said, "Yeah, I guess I am Mrs. Geppetto," she said. So it's.
I did the same thing this year watching Blackbird, which was unbelievable, with my wife. I turned to her and said, "That's Sal Bass." She had no idea what I was talking about, but really a great presence on that show. So
good show, I thought.
Yeah, really good show.
Miniseries. Oh, wow, terrific.
what else are you working on these days? What can you tell us you're most excited about?
Sure. There's a couple of things I can't tell you about, unfortunately, but I'm trying to think what is it? Well, you got Blackbird. You got, I'm in an episode of Law and Order that will be on actually this week. Law and Order, Organized Crime. That's why I was back east for 2 weeks over Thanksgiving. I did a film called Spin the Bottle, which is obviously a horror film. I enjoy doing that. I did the Annabelle films. I don't. Yeah. The James Wan's company, and what else? Probably the closest thing to my heart is something that's in the festivals right now, and it's called Rough Magic: Exit Shakespeare, and it's about Shakespeare late in his life, dealing with the regrets and can he go home? What is his life? He's struggling with some of his last plays just before The Tempest. So it's 38 minutes, and it's done very well in the festivals. And as a matter of fact, we just had our hardest screening. We showed it at the theater company I belong to with, 40 of the actors, I respect and have known, and they came and. So there's that. I have I have an ongoing World of Warcraft. I do mocap as well, which I love. It sort of makes you feel like a kid. I did what was it called? It was a Star Wars Forbidden Warrior, I believe. Is it called? No, that's another movie. It was a Star Wars recent video game from a couple of years ago. And so I have there's a lot going on, and a couple of, as I say, there's one thing for Netflix that's a big, a two-parter film that I can't even really talk about. That I was excited because, keeping busy in the last, as you probably know, in the last 3 years is no small.
Yeah. So, it sounds great. There's a lot on your plate there. I'd love to hear that, and definitely looking forward to that Netflix show for sure. And the Shakespeare looks great. I was just looking it up while you were talking. It looks really good.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So, can you let the cat out of the bag? Were you Salman Rushdie or were you Sal Bass?
Listen, one sworn to secrecy always. It will always be Omerta. The Sicilian code of honor.
Oh yeah, I know.
What do you think? I mean, that's like asking me which pizza is better, Sally or Pepe's. I mean,
Well, which is?
That was going to be our next question.
Oh, get out! No,
you got to choose one.
You got to choose. Well, I'll tell you. I choose mine by the time of day. If you can go, I like them both. And you got to realize. I mean, they're interconnected families. I mean, I have. This goes back. Since before I was born, they're just different. But I tend to like to go to Pepe's when it's not as crowded, which means in the afternoon. So I switch. I don't declare allegiance. You know what I am? I am Switzerland. That's who I am.
You get the regular, you get the clam pie.
Oh, I love the clam. Yeah. It just depends. It depends on my mood. Matter of fact, those pizzas were so delicious that one of my memories outside of, I play CYO basketball, and then we'd go, each get an individual, and they were so good that we would all burn the roof of our mouth. Because we were eating it when it was still hot, so it was.
And then you spent time at Temples, so maybe you have a Pat's versus Gino's opinion too, but maybe not.
I was too busy in Philadelphia. I didn't have that much in the way of pizza. I would go down to the Italian market though on Saturdays and shop, but I lived in Germantown, so Germantown, and then by the art museum. I used to ride my bike by, we call it the Rocky Steps, from Rocky. I lived for a couple of years close by. Yeah.
Museum, the whole thing. Well, listen, beautiful. Tony, we can't thank you enough, man, for taking a trip down memory lane. You are forever Sal Bass, Salman Rushdie. We may never get the answer,
okay.
But
okay.
You hit it out of the park on that episode. Thanks for the memories, and man, you keep trucking along. So that's great.
Thank you, guys, and I'm really glad we can finally do it. So.
All
Thank
the
you,
best,
Tony.
Tony.
This was great. Thank you.
Take care. Be well.
You too. Cheers.